One of the most interesting things about COVID-19 is the impact that it has had on businesses and organizations. People are not doing things the way that they always did. They are pivoting on a dime. One of the organizations or one of the industries and sectors that has made that pivot in a tremendous way is the nonprofit sector, specifically healthcare foundations. Today, we're going to talk to Jennifer Gillivan, President and CEO of IWK Healthcare Foundation, and she's going to tell us about the Frontline Fund. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Dawn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing in all of this?
Good. You know, we're all, I think, doing our best, and we're pivoting and we're changing, and everything. Speed seems to be a really fast thing right now. I mean, really fast. And yeah, we're all trying to muddle through, right? It's unprecedented where we are.
Exactly. And I understand that you've had, a huge disappointment, not just you and your health foundation, but health foundations across the country, and the fact that your biggest fundraiser of the year is gone.
Yeah.
Christmas has left the building.
Yeah, it was a very sad day when I had to announce it, but it was you have to put the health and safety, obviously, of everyone it's at stake. And so, yes, so while I say telethon is gone, the kids are still there, and we still need people to remember that. And those that can, we hope they'll continue to support us, because our front line never goes away, right? We're always there. So, yeah.
So how do you switch out something like telethon? What was that worth to you?
Well, it's a year-long amount of fundraising, but a lot of it happens in May, like in the spring, anywhere from February on. So we had a radiothon for March that didn't happen, and then we have telethon, which normally happens in June. And the totality last year was over $6.5 million. So thankfully, there are companies who are still continuing to fundraise and will this summer, and some who've already done it. And we hope, we're seeing individuals who say, I normally give, and I'm not going to not give this year to you guys. And so they've given, and so we're very, very grateful. But it's hurting us, but it's hurting everyone, right? Everyone's in, like, they cancel the Olympics, like it's. We're all in this together, right? So we're doing the best we can.
Now, back on April 23rd, there was a press release went out across the country about a new fundraising initiative that I understand from speaking to you prior to this interview is unprecedented as well. It's a real groundbreaking initiative called the Frontline Fund. Can you tell us a little bit what that's about and how it came into being?
Sure. So the Frontline Fund is actually historic. It's never really happened before in Canadian history. So a group of leaders in the fundraising health space came together, and it was actually Michael McCain who wanted to make a donation, but he wanted to make a donation that had an impact across the country. And was looking
This is Michael McCain Healthcare. This is Maple Leaf Foods, Michael McCain.
Yes,
we're talking
yeah.
here.
So the impetus for the idea started. He wanted to make the donation, so we basically formed a steering committee, which had representatives from across the country, the East Coast representative, and some of these people inside the steering committee would be some of the top fundraising executives in the country. And what was so heartwarming was everybody down-tooled on territory, competition, all of that got put aside. And it was, how can we create something that can help across the country on the front lines of all of the major hospitals who are struggling right now? And I mean, what this Frontline Fund is not to take away from local fundraising, and it was to complement, and it wasn't to take away from what the government's doing. But these are unprecedented times, and we know that. And so we came together and we created very fast a whole marketing campaign. We got a lot of media and in kind, and we pooled all our resources to make this happen. We sent a note out to all the hospitals who the criteria was 100 beds or over, because generally they're the ones with the ICU. So that was the criteria, because we had to cut it off somewhere. And we sent it to every province, and well over 100 hospitals now are involved. It's closer to, I think, 150 hospitals are involved now. We asked them as participants to sign an agreement, which is that you will be accountable for the money that you receive, that you will follow the impact of it and report back, so that we can be fully transparent with Canadians. We made a criteria that if donations happen in a province, they stay in the province. and then they're divided by the hospitals involved in that province. If a corporation or someone like a philanthropist like Michael McCain wants to make it Canada-wide, we then divide it by population. So we've tried to keep it very, very fair. We've also kept a percentage back for Indigenous and Northern communities because they wouldn't necessarily meet the correct threshold of 100 beds, but they are in need. We worked in partnership with Canada Helps, which is an online platform well known to most nonprofits agency, and they actually receive all the donations. They receipt the donations to Canadians, and then they disperse them. And they actually, the first payments actually start today to the hospitals today. Yeah. And so then that's a regular weekly thing, and they keep an accounting of everything. The data is with them. It's at the end of this campaign, that data is destroyed. It's not kept for any one organization. That's not what this is about. Since then, we've had other companies come on board, TD Bank. And so I think we've well over 10 million already raised, but we need more because if you divide it across the country, you can see. The criteria where we're saying we need the funds to go towards is PPE, so any kind of protective equipment. And if you think about it, even when you're reopening, your province is reopening, we're not out of this pandemic till there's a vaccine.
Right.
And people are going to be hypersensitive to infections, and nowhere more so than hospitals. So, you know, we want to make sure that the hospitals are fully stocked as they go into the next 18 months. Second is any kind of support for the staff, mental health support, you know, care, appreciation. Some of the staff don't go home; they stay in hotels or they stay in you know. So anywhere we can sort of support the staff. And then the third piece is some of the institutions really want to take on research, because there's so many aspects to research. There's not just the vaccine or treatment. There's also other learnings that are happening now around care, access, transmission, God knows, like there's so many. So there are the three buckets that each hospital agreed when they took on to come on to this Frontline Fund, that they would then direct their money. And then the freedom is within that to say, whatever your hospital needs, that's where you will direct it. Some will direct it to all three, some will only direct it to one area. So that is the frontlinefund.ca. You can go on, you can donate directly online. And if any major company wants to be involved, you can put them on the East Coast. They can come to me, and then I will send them up to the right people to get that organized, because that's a bit of a different process. There's a full website. We list all the hospitals. We list all the members of the steering committee. Everything is on there that you would want to see. It's pretty profound for me. Working alongside these executives, and all of us just sort of you know, we all have our own organizations that we're trying to figure out, we're trying to work on, but we added this on top of it, and it was so heartwarming to see that. It's a real Canadian effort, and it's just a proud moment. It's like a war effort. It's just so interesting to see it come together, and it'll be something I'm always going to look back on and say I was really proud to be a part of.
Right. Looking at federal budgets, I mean, healthcare and governments all around, healthcare is a huge line item on government budgets. Why do we need something like the Frontline Fund?
Because it's unprecedented where we are today. You know, and I think as we move forward, that's why we've put in research, because hopefully in the future state, if God forbid there's another virus, and if you listen to the experts, that could happen, we will be in much better shape as a country, and much more capable of handling it. I mean, the world got caught out with this virus. The world went quiet, basically. It's a global pandemic. Nothing that you and I this time last year would have even anticipated we'd be sitting here having this interview, right? And so what we're trying to do is complement what the government's already doing. I mean, I believe personally Canada's done a really good job. I really do. I think they've tried their best with whatever they've got. This is our kind of effort to come alongside government, and if people generally are feeling helpless and I want to help, but I don't know how to help, or I don't know where to help, unless you already have a relationship. And we're not interfering with that at all. We're saying this is not to take away from local fundraising. But if you wanted to help across Canada, or you want to help in your province, all of the hospitals, because you feel for all of those frontline workers, this is a way to do it.
A lot of fundraising initiatives have a particular goal in mind. They'll say, you know, we want to raise $6 million
Yeah,
this year. We want to raise $10 million this
yeah.
year, whatever. Is there a goal for the Frontline Fund?
No, I think we'll keep going until they don't need it. You know,
Mhm.
we're gonna give it a run and see how far we can get. Because when you're trying to help over 100 plus hospitals, um, you know, you divide out, that's not, you know, we want to be able to have a sizable impact in every single one of those hospitals. So that's
Mhm.
what we're aiming for. So we purposefully didn't set out a goal, because again, we don't want to compete with either ourselves and our local markets, or this is to augment that. This is just a different way to get money directly into the front lines fast and across the country.
So looking at the three tiers of, I guess, support you're looking
Yeah,
for in terms of the donations that you want to receive, you know, the supplies, the supports, the
yeah.
research. So if a company approaches you and says, well, I have, you know, the masks that you need, or the gloves that you need, or whatever the, you know, type of personal protective equipment, are there charitable receipts, you know, for these kinds of donations?
No, that's a different setup. So mostly what's happening, and I mean, we're involved in it locally here, so there have been companies that have come forward. There's a whole procurement process, not just procurement as in buying the mask, but also in donating them. And they go through a process. So in Nova Scotia, for example, NSHA and the IWK pull together. We direct people to an area, and then because they have to be up to standard. There's a whole, it's not just here's a box of masks, go use them. So we've not gotten involved, not because that's provincially across the country
Mhm.
happening anyway. And then you know, federally, I'm sure they're already procuring in, and they're buying, and they're working with companies who are producing, like Stanfields here is producing gowns, and there are other companies doing masks. So this is more pure. If you want to give dollars, and those dollars can then be used within these three areas for each hospital that receives those dollars, and you feel I've helped the Frontline Fund, then that's what this is for. If it's for other equipment, if it's for a more local cause, then you would go to your local organization, your local
Mhm.
hospital.
Right.
So we try to keep it really clean, really simple, really easy to do, and not be territorial into other people's areas, other organizations' areas.
Do you think that this is going to be a new model for fundraising as we move forward? Because it does seem to me that
Yeah.
the old way of doing things, the in-person meetings, the big gatherings for fundraising galas and so
Mhm.
on, it doesn't seem like, you know, those are going to fly in the near future. Do you think that this type of initiative is what we're looking at as the future of fundraising?
I think it's one of the future parts. I think the other piece too to this was a direct kind of response, almost like what I call a war effort, right? This was, oh God, we're in this. What can we do? What's happening is, as we work with this, and as we work with the different donors and try things differently, we're learning. No different than other industries, your own included. You're all trying new things to see what's going to happen. So for me, I mean, I've always been fascinated by disruption, and now we're living in it. Like
Right.
now we're living in history, right? And so there's organizations that have completely collapsed. There's others that are staying the course, and they're trying to re-engineer who they are. You know, it would be fascinating a year from now to have the same conversation and see what happened in our industry, right? As in other industries as well. Because for me as a leader, it's how do I get us through this? But then what are the changes that I need to make or invest in to get us to what I call it, to the other side of the river, so that we're the ones that have disrupted enough, but not blown ourselves up, to
Hmm.
actually get to the other side. Because it's going to be all around tone and temperature too, because people's moods and people, how they're going to feel, it's hard to predict, right? Because, you know, we're 2 years away, if you really, from some form of a vaccine, right, for this particular virus. right? I think the world's changed. I think we've changed. I think within that change, there's going to be people who are going to, our industries that are going to lose, and there's going to be really new ways to do work, ways to be together, ways to support. We haven't even thought of sitting here today, even having this conversation. That's the most exciting and fascinating part about this. I want to be on that winning side. So that for me is, like any leader you talk to, it's about how do I survive today and what am I going to have to do to reinvent, right? And as I said before, loyalty for me is the new cash. It totally is. It's about authenticity and loyalty. And I think you're going to see more people through donations are going to want to say, if I'm going to buy that pair of shoes, I want to know that the company who makes those shoes is also doing something really good over here. And it's not their marketing budget. It's their core DNA is going to help. So I think social enterprise is going to become huge. You're going to see more and more people wanting to support local. You're going to see them wanting to physically see what is it you do. Not tell me on a fancy ad that I support good causes. Show me. I want to see it. So I think there's a real disruption coming for sure.
Mm-hmm. Disruption, if anything, is the theme of our time. So,
well, it was an overused word before, but now it's a really relevant word because it's the truth. Before it was like these really cool gurus would talk about disruption and leadership and all this. Now it's like we're in it. We're all disrupting.
We are in it indeed.
It's the generations coming up. I mean, how is this impacting them now? And what are they going to, do they want to carry on going to university the same way? Do they want to do jobs the way you and I thought we had to do jobs when we were going into the job market? That's all changing. It's fascinating.
The more things change, the more they continue to change. Jennifer, I want to thank you for your time here today.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for giving, for talking to me about the Frontline Fund. It's really important. So I really appreciate that. And I wish you guys the best of luck at Atlantic Business Magazine, one of my favorite ones.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your loyalty as well.
Always, always. Take care.